Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Crypto Talks. My name is Phil. I'm here with Rob, and we're doing
Okay,
TA Monday again because it's Monday, right?
it is
So there's
Monday.
that. And Bitcoin is dead, apparently, according to some people on Twitter or X. Um, I don't think we should be, and I don't think we subscribe to that
Just
idea.
that Bitcoin has collapsed horribly to prices not seen since last week.
Oh no, what are we gonna do?
Yep.
Oh,
Now, part of the course, normal day.
yeah,
Enjoy the volatility. That's the.
yeah.
This for as we talked about for several weeks. Things are getting. Things still look bullish, but things were getting a little bit overcooked. This is the buying opportunity to wait for, and here it's come. How long will it hang around? Will it go lower? Maybe.
Well, we're gonna try to figure that out now, I guess, because we're. Let's open the charts. Just have a quick look and see where we end up. So here we go. We're back with our beloved Bitcoin charts. So we've had a huge correction here, as you can see, which you can barely see in the grand scale of things. No, but to be a little bit serious, let's zoom in just a little bit here. So last week we were talking about how we would kind of try to get to 48 or this area around here, 45, 48 somewhere, and where we would start to see some resistances. And we didn't really get to the first resistance line yet before this pullback. But truth be told, like this pullback it's just, what is it, 10% from the top?
It's about 10%. Yeah.
From the top, if you count the wick, yeah, 9.64%. This is like, just for everyone who's new, and we're not as experienced in being in Bitcoin and all this stuff. This is a completely healthy and normal pullback for Bitcoin to kind of reset some of the indicators back to where they can start bouncing off. It's literally what's happening. I mean, just looking at the current RSI right here, we topped out right here on the RSI. The RSI started moving down even though the price was going up, kind of resetting the RSI back to the midline right here, and then it bounced, and then we kind of shot up, which was kind of expected at the end of this. We were starting to feel like this yellow trend line here was getting weaker and weaker and weaker every single day because it was slamming its head against it the whole time, and then we popped off, obviously. But now that we've come above the RSI again and many other indicators as well, it's kind of just turning down now to kind of redo this thing. And I think, my thinking is that now we're seeing that we want to come down on the RSI, kind of land on the midline somewhere, and kind of just smooth it out a little bit before we start seeing some type of movement again. It doesn't necessarily mean we're going to bounce up. We can still go down to the bottom of the RSI, which where we usually go once we've been topped out. But at the current sentiment of the market, everyone is super greedy. The fear and greed index, I think, is showing 74. That's greed. We tend to see these halfway reset to baseline, basically.
It's just mean reversion. Everything comes back to sensible levels, and this is still a pretty aggressive rally. It's still holding a very strong uptrend. It's normal. It is not the sign that everything's going to roll over and collapse if things carry on going down. The fundamentals that were true last week, they are still true today, but you have to consider that things have got very, very overcooked, and on the whole, this is still a very strong uptrend, but it's very difficult to maintain something this ferocious. It needs a consistent influx of new buyers, and without that influx, then, well, it doesn't take much selling pressure, as we talked about. Every buyer has a seller, and every time that there is a seller, you need somebody in there to buy. And if there is not, if the buying pressure has been exhausted and there are people looking to take profit, they all have their stop loss all at the same place, and it comes along, somebody just takes a little bit of Bitcoin or a lot of Bitcoin, they punch a hole through the support level, and this is what the cascading liquidation is. This is why one stop loss hits, that turns somebody who's holding into an additional seller into a market that doesn't have any buyers, and it just goes down and down and down until it finds the next buy level. And it's, we can maybe just take a quick look at my screen, because I've got a very short-term chart on here. This is the 5-second chart, and we can see how rapid this was. I mean, this entire thing, if you look from where it really dropped down to the bottom, this was this a case of 7 minutes? Yeah, less than 7 minutes, and that's a 6% drop. So yeah, these moves can happen very, very quickly, but you also see that the rebound is quick, and we've had a day of trading sideways and not doing anything particularly substantial until we've decided to have a retest. And yeah, it needs to bounce. If it doesn't go up here, it's going down, which is a very stupid thing to say, but it's not a stupid thing to say, because it's true that we have to see buyers come in and show that actually, no, there is demand here and people want to buy. They're not panicking, they're buying the dip rather than selling the fear. That's the mentality you want to see. People will talk about the greed and fear index, as you mentioned, being like, oh, be careful when it's too greedy. But when you're talking about the start of a bull market and something that hasn't really been, there's nothing substantial, you need a bit of greed. You need people willing to go, no, now is the time. Now is the time I'm going to pile in. Now is the time I'm going to start to cut these bills out of my life, and I'm going to add more investment portfolio. That this is what you need. You can't just live in fear all the time, as much as people would have you think. The market takes turns being fearful and being greedy, and if there's enough greed, they'll buy the dip and we'll just melt straight back up.
Yeah, and speaking of the dip, I mean, I'm going to turn over to this one. This is on the 1 hourly here. I'm not sure if you can see. I'm trying to see if you can see. Yeah. So here's the first big one, and now we're kind of cascading down through that because there's no support left here. It's been bought up already. So you tend to get these kind of retests. And, on the hourly, things are kind of reset already, but it doesn't necessarily matter. What matters is important support levels, right? Where we can assume that there's going to be a lot of buyers, which tends to happen around previously important areas, right? And so if we go back on the daily here, we've had this chart now for, I don't know, at least since the start of the year, we've had this almost exactly this chart that we kept drawing on. And the support levels that we have currently, we put a line, I think, last week at 40K just because of the psychological number of 40K, right? Which is sort of where we've bounced now, a little bit, at least for the time being. And the next proper for me, at least, level of support is going to be this trend line, because that's acted as resistance for well over 18 months, I think. And we finally cracked through it, which means that's now, the trend line is now flipped from resistance to support, and this is where I would kind of see it come down to. And if it goes down at the rate it's doing now, it's going to end up at 39 maybe, but I really don't see it just going red candle and then another massive red candle. It can happen.
We can see, you can see twice here on the chart where you've just got this drop and then another drop, then another drop. It does happen. And deal with it. It's just part of the game. This is
Precisely.
this is exactly what risk if you've gone all in within the last week and now you're sitting in a 10% loss, going, oh no, this game is rigged and everybody's against me. No, you just bought the top. You just bought when it was not an opportune moment, and this is what patience calls for. Now, if we look at this, though, however, the same patience that people have been waiting for, you might have been waiting for since below 30K, because this is now the biggest real pullback, or the sharpest pullback we've had since 30K. It's gone a pretty long way, and it's not unusual to see cooling off periods. You can see it right here in this chart. We go up and then we go sideways. Those sideways include very sharp, very janky, very unsexy and horrible to trade movements. It's not nice. It's not these nice swinging Fibonacci levels. It's Bart Simpson patterns, and it's liquidations, and it's horizontal movements, and it's flags everywhere. It's not fun, and
Yeah, it's
that
just
happens during
awkward.
periods. That's what Bitcoin is. Bitcoin goes up 25% of the time, it goes down 25% of the time, and then 50% of the time it just trades like shit.
Doesn't do anything.
It doesn't do any exactly. It's
boring.
And that includes, and within those periods of it doing nothing, it can have 100, 200, 300% rallies. It can also have 30, 40, or 50% corrections, and we shouldn't rule out that kind of move still happening. We can have those kind of levels. Now, do I think we're at that level? I don't think we're really gonna roll over and die, but it is possible that this was the top.
Yeah. No, I mean, precisely. I mean, and just looking at what's happened throughout the year, we had these big pushes, and then we have a correction, big push, a correction, big push, correction, and now we have a massive push, and then a correction. And it's like the real question is that I think a lot of people are asking, like, how far will it go before, like, where do I want to start looking for, where do I want to get back in type thing. And that's, like I said, it's like trend line, but that's my first place. And the reason why I haven't removed our old fib levels, for those of you who have watched before, where we had a whole lot of bouncing happening before, on previous fib levels, we've not really used the what is it, the 236 that much. We kind of just got stuck around that, but seeing a pullback to that will kind of, it would make a little bit sense now that we have all that, the action around these other fib levels, and our 236 might not be that important anymore. So I kind of would like to see a pullback to it to see if it holds or not, which means I can then remove my fib levels at this point. And this is a very weird fib level to pull as well. I mean, it's kind of not, you're not supposed to pull this way, but I have anyway because it's played out.
Sure,
so I've just left it there. But I've left it there. I mean, it's worked out, so it's fine. But yeah, I really don't know. I think I drew a bars pattern here before we started, just for fun, and I think I grabbed it from here, and I said, how about something like this, right?
Why
this
the hell not?
to me just looks kind of like, I'm not saying it's going to happen exactly like this, but it's like, okay, we get stuck around 40k, we kind of peak down under the previous line just to scare some people off into selling, and then we start bouncing on top of it again, and then we kind of go off to the races. And this is like a 2, almost 3 month long bars pattern right here. I'm not saying it's going to be that long, but certainly it's like, this is a possibility. It's also a possibility that it just goes the other way around and just falls completely down. We don't really know that, but with, like I said, with the fear and greed index being so greedy, and not too greedy, it's not super greedy at 95, right? It's 74. It's not that overextended, and most indicators have kind of started cooling down already, except for the weekly RSI. I think it's still well above 75 or 80 or something. So
but we know that can stay elevated for weeks and months.
So that can stay like that for 6 months.
Yeah, you don't look at that. The long-term RSI is not to tell you when to sell, because it has to get into that overbought period if you want the kind of exponential run. So you will always sell too early by going, oh, the weekly RSI is at 80. Now I need to sell. What the weekly RSI will tell you is when the trend is cooled down, and when it's like, no, okay, no more bull market, everything is really cooling down on a long-term level, even though then the chart still might be printing higher highs. That's the kind of divergence you want to look for that says, okay, fundamentally now we're done. The market needs to relax.
Yeah, and speaking of divergence, I'm just going to turn the divergence on here. We've had 3 bearish divergences um, that played out since October, the end of October, from this peak to this peak, and now from that peak to this peak up here. And it's like, okay, yeah, price is up, RSI is down. That basically says momentum is cooling down, the trend is cooling down, like you said. And
Yeah.
we might just see like a sideways correction or even an uptrending correction, which we saw during this period right here.
So despite all of this, yes, okay, there's a bearish divergence on the RSI. It's not a particularly strong bearish divergence. It's close to a double top, and more importantly, I would say, as it stands, this is something that could change if the price decides it is going to take another leg down. The RSI is still printing a higher low. It is not dropped below the low that we saw a couple of weeks ago in November. So this is still an RSI uptrend, and that is not that it's these patterns play out in both technicals, in both the oscillators as well as the price action, where we could have just another absolutely massive leg higher, and there is certainly a case for that. And everybody who now is panicking gets made to look like an idiot. And this is it. The market will make fools of about half the people, or they'll make fool of the majority of the people because they're the ones that move it. And if a lot of people are panicking right now and dumping their bags, and there have very, very happy, greedy buyers for those bags, then yeah, we should expect to see prices just turn around and go, you know what? You're all daft. What are you selling for now? And I think there's definitely a case to be presented for that.
Yeah. But okay, so I feel like we're kind of done with Bitcoin. I mean, like I said, the levels are here. We'll just have to wait and see if it touches this trend line or not. I don't feel like the 40K is much of a support level. It's just a psychological number. It's a number. Yeah. Just quickly having a super quick look at ETH though. ETH is actually wicked onto this line where we have this previous top here. It's falling back through its it attempted a breakthrough here, and obviously it just followed Bitcoin's move and just fell through. But not a big deal. And in this, cool.
As per your most recent video, Phil, always prioritize horizontal trend lines over the uptrend, and for me, that is a absolutely perfect resistance into support flip. As it stands here, ETH is a screaming buy. Technically, this is an area where you've got an easy trade to say, if you're willing to take a bit of risk and go, I think that it's still in an uptrend, it's going to hold this support level. Well, it's bottomed at around 21.30 or so.
21.30, yes, exactly, on the dot.
So
nice, good eye.
Say it could come down and take another leg down to 2,000. You can put your stop loss at say 1950, and suddenly that's a cracking trade. And it then turns around. You've bought in between 2,000 and 2,200, and it goes up and it flings up to 3,000, making everybody look a fool. I'm not saying that's going to happen, of course, but there are people who will be taking that bet right now, and if they are numerous enough, then the price will follow.
Yeah, I'll add to this as well. This is, like I said, this is from this peak right here. However, and obviously this right here. So it's got some fair strength to it. This horizontal scroll line. We do have another one just below it though, at around 2020.
So
which is on the wick though, but
we could very clearly re-enter that range, and but this may act now as another accumulation zone, either right here or with one more leg down to 2,000. I would expect that Ethereum, having tried so hard to break 2,000 all year, will give it a decent go to stay above it. And if it can't stay above it, then that's not a sign of strength. It's a sign of something which isn't beating out the overall market.
And you're right. And speaking of psychological levels as well, 2K is a psychological level at this point for ETH. And, seeing something like, I don't know, we could probably see this happening, because then the RSI could possibly come down as well to, be oversold again. And that makes a lot of sense to me in terms of ETH, at least, because it's not really shown that much strength compared to, Strength, yes, but buying pressure. It's not.
It
It's
hasn't
almost
shown.
like people are aping into Solana instead
Yeah, it
for
hasn't shown
now.
relative strength. It hasn't
Yeah.
been beating out. It hasn't. ETH BTC is at yearly lows nearly, and I've
Hmm.
talked about it for several weeks. We're still around this buying range, and this is the range
There we
that
go.
we really need to see buyers come in and say, "I'm willing to take a bet on Ethereum over Bitcoin."
Hmm.
And if those buyers don't show up, then Ethereum is not going to catch a bid, and it will continue to bleed out against projects that are currently got a faster pace. Will that last forever? No. There will be a period where Ethereum absolutely flies, but
Hmm.
if the market isn't telling you that now is the time, if it's continuing to be beaten by other coins, then yeah, it's a poor allocation of capital if it can't beat out the overall market.
Yeah. No, if ETH is gonna, I've been surprised at how slowly ETH has been moving this year. To be honest with you, it's up 83% year to date right now, compared to I think Bitcoin. Let me just double check real quick. 146%. Uh, I would have expected, personally, at least ETH holding up to Bitcoin for most of the year. With swings up and down against Bitcoin, obviously, but it's been very slow, and I think that has a lot to do with all the competition that's entered the market back in like 2020, 2018, all these other protocols that have been offering what ETH can offer, but at cheaper prices, faster, all that stuff. So it's
For
eaten
maybe
the
just
market cap up.
flip to my chart for a
Hmm.
second.
Yep.
So say here is Ethereum in terms of the market. This is being Ethereum dominance, and from very previous bull market back in 2017, its highs were it did come quite close to flipping Bitcoin at one point, being well over 20, around 30% of the market, and during the last bear market, it completely and totally bled against Bitcoin. It lost well close to around I think 90% of its value versus Bitcoin, somewhere around that,
Mm.
and it dropped to 7% of the market, with Bitcoin taking over 60 at the time.
Yep.
And it then had a really, really big rise in terms of being as big as it already was. It was the second biggest for a long time, except for brief periods where XRP took it over. But then the majority of coins could not keep pace with Ethereum in the last bull market. And despite it already having such a huge market cap relative to other coins, very few coins could beat Ethereum. It's a very difficult feat to achieve that twice, and it is normal for something like Ethereum to come down and find its fundamental value. And it has issues for what people have tried to build on it for a long time, and other chains have come along, as you say, and they've tried to solve those problems. And if they can solve those problems to the point where they are a more desirable product than Ethereum, then they are going to allocate capital at a faster rate. That doesn't mean that Ethereum is not still useful and is not still the giant. And
Oh yeah.
you have to consider, say that it lost 70% of its dominance in the market in the last bull market. It's held up remarkably well for a very long time throughout 2021, 2022, all the way into this year. It held around between 17 and 20% of market dominance. That's a really good feature, but it now looks as if this is starting to look like a distribution, and people are saying, I haven't really got the faith in Ethereum that I once had. And we may well see it will still gain in a full-blown bull market, but we may well see Ethereum dominance just continue to wane and come down and break down. However, there is the alternative that we come down and see a double bottom, and then it decides it's going to completely take over the market.
Yep.
Do we
For sure.
do we think it's going to take a share of the market off Bitcoin? It can do over a few years. Is it going to become the world's next computer? Well, that remains to be seen. That's the way that it has a bigger market cap than Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned, there are an awful lot of competitors, and those competitors are currently the faster horse. But no, Ethereum will have its time. It's just it has to possibly put in a bottom that a lot of current holders are very uncomfortable with. And this is the thing to look for is Ethereum going to outpace the market and say, here is definitely a buying opportunity. This is an area that has shown support at many levels, both on the ETH BTC chart and here just on the dominance chart. It could well catapult higher. If we're going to go into an altcoin season, Ethereum at some point will suck liquidity out of the market, and it will have a run which beats out the majority of the market, the same as Bitcoin has done for this year. We'll see this. We do see a slowing down of the cycles, whereby we see these rotations from Bitcoin into Ethereum into the other altcoins. Maybe we're seeing this over just much more extended periods of time, and Bitcoin is going to take charge for a longer period, and then Ethereum is going to take charge for a longer period, and we don't get the same bull market and bear market like we've had in previous cycles. We can expect the world is changing, cycles are changing, and what happened in the past doesn't have to happen in the future.
No. Well, okay, yeah, sure. Again, it's like I'm looking kind of. I was looking when you were talking at the charts right here, and I kind of just realized that the top 3 names, like in my book, I always discount XRP and BNB as the top names. They're both giants and they have their community and all that. But looking at Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana on my chart currently, up here, they're all down 7.5%, give or take, 0.1% here and there. And it speaks a lot to me when you know that Bitcoin's market cap is massive. ETH's market cap is, it's massive as well, but it's not as big as Bitcoin, but it's still down the same amount as Bitcoin. And then you have Solana, which is a much, much smaller market cap, and it's also down the same. That's, to me, that says lots of buy pressure for both Solana and ETH compared to Bitcoin at this point. Well, because they're holding up to Bitcoin's drop. Usually when you see a 7.5% drop in Bitcoin, altcoins go 10, 15, 20% a lot of the time. So I think there's a lot of interest in altcoins at this moment right now.
Definitely, we can see that clear as day. We've seen the Ethereum dominance chart. If we take a look at the Bitcoin dominance chart, surprisingly, this is not something we normally see in a downtrend during these drops. We normally see Bitcoin losing less, as you say, than altcoins. But no, right now, Bitcoin dominance is dropping quite considerably. It's dropped 3% in what has been a downtrend, and while it's been consolidating over the last few days. So we've seen Bitcoin be overtaken by alts. They've seen this risk taking coming into the market, and despite this drop, we're still seeing, as you say, risk taking. I do think there's a fairly strong case for a bullish return here. I think it's fairly reasonable that there might be another leg down. That wouldn't surprise me. I'm not turning around and going, this is the bottom and go all in. But I am expecting higher prices rather than lower prices within a reasonable time frame. I'm not confident that this uptrend is over yet. I'm not sure we're even going to have an extended cool down. Maybe I'll be proved wrong. This happens occasionally. Yeah. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think before we start rounding off, we still have plenty of time left, actually, I just realized. But if I take a look at Solana here, because I did write in the description that we're going to talk about Solana as well. Because again, I think you would agree, it's one of the top 3 names that are being talked about at the moment in the crypto are Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana. So I think it's more than fair just to look at Solana as well during this. But Solana is a bit simpler to look at, I feel like, because there's so many trend lines and stuff on my charts here, but we have just kind of bounced on, this is the daily, by the way. we've just touched on this trend line again. That's a kind of a weird one. It's running through, a top, and then it turned into support rather than resistance, and it's been kind of sitting on that for quite some time now, and it's just bounced on it again. And seeing all these support lines, they're supposed to be green. Sorry, they're not. They don't carry much strength to them. I mean, 68, yeah, that was the previous top here when it tried to get through. It's still above that now, but it did wick under it, so I don't think there's much support there, to be fair. The 62 level kind of sits on just this peak right over here back in whenever. And it was also kind of a peak here. And it was kind of an important, price for a while during this period. But the 62 for me is kind of like delete. I don't feel like that has any strength to it at all, really. But then seeing where would Solana correct to? I mean, it has some trend lines here, but they don't carry much strength either. But the one that I do see having some strength to it is 48, which is anchored on these ones over here, the peaks. And I mean, can we see Solana go from, what was it, 78 all the way down to 48? I'm sure, but I think it all depends on what Bitcoin does, really. At the end of the day, it leads the market. If Solana wants to pump, it pumps. If Bitcoin wants to pump, everything pumps. And it's
a fair assessment.
Yeah, I don't really see. We could possibly get this a triple bottom here at 51 because we had some bounces here during the this period here. It's not going to carry much strength, I don't think, but it certainly has some strength to it. So there will be buyers there too, I think. But yeah, that's about what I have on Solana, to be fair, because it's just the only thing that really matters in this for us. That's why we always do the Bitcoin thing, the Bitcoin TA, because that's generally what Bitcoin does. Everything does. Yeah, I think. Do we want to touch on Solana ETH, by the way? Because we already talked about it a little bit. But
we can do. We always can do.
Yeah, because I remember we had this bounce here a couple of days ago on this previous top. So this is Solana versus ETH, and we were talking about how Solana or how other layer one smart contract platforms were taking kind of a piece away from ETH every time or every day, a little bit here, a little bit there, more adopters for other chains and all that. And seeing Solana do this against ETH and then kind of stabilizing, to me is a really good sign for Solana, in terms of what it is in the crypto space overall. Like it's holding up against Ethereum during a correction. We'll see how far this correction goes, obviously, but if it can hold this support level right here, and that's supposed to be green now that I see it, I don't know, it feels like Solana can maybe get to 20% of ETH's market cap, and I think it's already at 13, 15, something like that. But it certainly has some strength, and I think a lot of ETH maxes. We've all met them. 11, yeah, okay. But it's worked itself up from, I think, like 1% of ETH's market cap this year up to 11, which is
it's a phenomenal run. And this is where the question comes in. As I've said, is this sustainable? Can this carry on for 1 year, for 2 years? How long before Ethereum is fundamentally undervalued relative to Solana? It might not be that Ethereum is going to completely blow minds off them. There might be other things that move faster than Ethereum, even after Solana has made a significant move. But by looking at these comparatives, you can look at it and go, actually, no, right now, even though I think Solana's got more room to go in dollar terms, can it beat the other coins? Can it beat the main coins in the market? And can it beat out other altcoins that might not have had the same liquidity enter them yet, but yet will take advantage of the rotation?
Yeah. precisely. And I tweeted this picture, basically this picture to as a response, and I think we brought this up before. Now that we're looking at ETH Solana, it's like our indicator is telling you, he's basically signaling to sell Solana into ETH at this point because of this massive run. And that's a risk that somebody probably took. I know the guy that I responded to did the reverse thing. He sold ETH into Solana at the peak of a huge run against ETH, which
and
it's
maybe maybe it carries on. Maybe it does carry on. It absolutely can do. But that isn't. This is the point where you're going. Let's take a bit of time to cool down and accept that there's a reasonable likelihood that it can't keep on making multiples over other coins for a sustained period of time. It may well have a 6-month cooldown period and then go for another leg. This happens. You'll have times where your coin is just going down and sideways and just not really doing anything, and you get so frustrated watching other coins doing 10, 20, 30% days. And if you can identify that when your coin or the thing that you've got your money in is done, the trend has stopped, it needs time to have a bit of a calm down. Even if you don't sell all of it, you can sell some of it, and you can start to invest in other areas that you think have more growing room in the same amount of time.
Yeah, just swap between the tokens, really. I mean, personally, I didn't sell any Solana into ETH here. I could definitely see that a lot of people did that just to kind of, or even sold Solana into something else that they think would move further. And that makes sense because, after a huge run like that, just like you said, if we get a kind of a consolidation of Solana where it's kind of building that base of a good support level later on, or like a good fair price for Solana at this point, if you would swap your Solana or your ETH or whatever into something that's newer, that's smaller cap, maybe take some risk on high risk altcoins, ride that wave up with that coin, and then swap back, like you've made a profit in your initial coin, right? And which is probably what a lot of people are currently doing. I wouldn't be surprised at all.
It's so when we've seen this price explosion in Solana, inevitably, this is inevitable. What happens is you now have a load of people in the Solana ecosystem that now have a lot more money than they did before. And a lot of those people are greedy, and they will really be happy with the money that they've got, but wouldn't it be nicer to have a bit more? And so they will start playing the Solana DEX games. They will start to invest in other stuff that is going to come along and change the world that's built on Solana. They're going to swap the Solana into other coins, and some of them will do they'll do mayhem. They'll do thousands of percent versus Solana. Most of them will end up losing 99% versus Solana. And but these short-term rotations can really make a lot of money for a lot of people. And it's about timing the market and not being caught 2 or 3 steps behind by holding on to something that has done its move and is now out of fashion. I mean, Chainlink I've heard more stuff about Chainlink in the last month than I have done for the last probably 2 years. Chainlink was so unsexy, so boring, and it was that time is done. And then suddenly it's woken up, and it's not even done an absolutely incredible gain, but just the fact that it's done something and it is a fundamentally good coin has got people excited. But maybe for now it had reached its fundamental value. Maybe it's been severely undervalued, and that can be seen if you just pop onto the chart for that. There we can see Chainlink is a coin. It's how's that for a accumulation phase? This has gone from May 2022 up until October 2023. That's an 18-month accumulation phase where the price just ranged between $5 and $10.
It's flat, essentially.
And maybe now it's ready to blast off to, I don't know, 100, 200, 500. Who knows? Something ridiculous. Maybe it will come all the way back down and drop below 10 again. Nobody can.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to fundamentally value these altcoins, and therefore, even if you keep a hodl bag, keep a moon bag by all means, but don't be afraid of taking profits from altcoins that have had exceptional runs, because most of the time, even if they move higher, eventually those runs get faded significantly, and it's much better to have good solid profits, especially if you've made significant multiples of your money. Be content with taking those profits, because a lot of people will enter the market and they will end up getting wrecked. A lot of people bought within the last week for the first time. They just bought crypto for the first time in the last week because, the market has said it's a new bull run and everything's going to go up again now, and they're now in a 10% loss within days. And sucks to be them, but this is what the market needs to drive new participants in, and unfortunately some people has to buy the top.
Yeah. I just switched over to the Bitcoin chart now because now it's back at the wick bottom there, testing out that 40K level. So I just wanted to just make sure that we see that going on. But
stick the 5-second chart on. Stick onto mine.
I can go to the 1 minute.
There you go.
Or
1 minute. All right.
Or we can just go to yours. Oh, God damn it! I keep forgetting. There we go. I want to be there. There we go. Okay, so 1 minute charts. Let's see if we can get to 40 and see if it bounces perfectly on it. So we're gonna have to keep talking for a couple more minutes, guys. Sorry.
Sorry.
No, but yes, no, but this is a healthy correction. At the end of the day, it's like everything needs to cool down a little bit. It might start with. Actually, now I'm gonna have to zoom out again. It usually starts with a big dump, right? You see it everywhere. It's like first you get a big dump and then you sideways, right? It's the same thing. Big dump, well, here's kind of volatile, but big dump, sideways. What about big dump and sideways? That works for me. I could definitely see that trend line looks kind of juicy at this point. It's a very long-term trend line, and in the video that I did a couple of days ago, where we talked about how to do trend lines and how to anchor them and all these things. In that video, I showed this trend line and I explained why it has so much power behind it. It's because it's so long. It's a long-term trend line. The longer it is, the more power it has behind it, especially if it's got multiple bounces on it. More than just twice. If it's got like 7 bounces on it, it's going to be extremely powerful. And as you said as well, horizontal lines are going to have more strength behind them as well, because it's much easier to track that, right? It's much easier, if you're trying to trade, to track a horizontal line, because it's always at the same price. A trend line, the price every day, every minute, it changes because it's pointing upwards or downwards.
Yeah.
So it's much harder to catch that. So yeah. Whoops. We'll have to see what happens here. I'm kind of happy it's cooling down, because I feel like it's so stressful to see things going up and up and up, and you don't know if you want to get in. And I know for a fact a lot of people have been waiting on the sidelines to kind of get this dump. People have been waiting since this time period when we had that initial pump, when it started cooling down. People have been waiting for that correction down, which never came, but now it's here. And there might be a lot of people now that have been, I think people that have been calling for 12K Bitcoin and still waiting for that big dump, they're kind of giving up right now. This is this correction here is like a godsend almost. At this point, a lot of people are just probably going to say, oh, fuck it, I'm in, let's go, and they get in. So
and that's kind of what the market will need. That's what it needs. It needs people who are willing to take the risk. It needs people to buy for the first time, and it needs people to be buying during scary times like this, because if there's nobody buying now, the price is going to keep going down.
Yeah. And I can tell you, in the next couple of days on Twitter, there's going to be pictures of wallets that have been buying a lot since this dump has happened. It's going to be like, oh, this whale bought this much, this guy bought this much, every time there's a dump, that kind of stuff circulates, and you're going to see it as well. And
Mm.
it's just a natural progression of Bitcoin's price, I guess.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, we say we're happy to try and take advantage of it where it shows up. I mean, we've had, just having a quick look at our strategy, we did get a buy signal. So this is only hourly. We did get a buy at that first drop. So we know you can get further drops, but objectively, this is saying this is an oversold place to buy. And even the 4 hour did give a drop as well. So it's fairly rare that there is, after we get one of these signals, it does happen, but when we normally get one of these signals, you have to go quite a long way back to see the few periods where it didn't bounce after these periods. After it does happen, but on the whole, you're more likely to get bounces.
Well, you didn't have to wait very long for that bounce there, where you circled it. I mean, it's like a couple of days later. It's just, but yeah,
it's like I'm just kind of trying to signal the imperfect buys as well as the perfect buys. But overall, if you've got the patience, it isn't difficult to see where the buying opportunities are.
Yeah, and I'll tell you right now, I'm looking at the 4 hourly, and since you and I built this tool, I know for a fact that if the next candle turns green on the 4 hourly, you will have a blue, which we labeled as a medium buy, and potentially, actually, let me double check. Actually, we'll even have a green one,
no, we won't do because of the cooldown.
Yeah. That depends on the cooldown. Yeah, we'll explain that in the manual for that tool once we release it. I promise.
Yes.
But yes, so I think with that, I feel like we've kind of gone over everything that we wanted to talk about on this, unless you have something you really want to talk about.
Not really. Only, I guess, sometimes the obvious buying places are the best places to buy.
Yeah. And most of the time, people are scared to buy there because it's going to keep dumping. It is what it is.
The best buys are made when you feel sick to do it. They are the best buys.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. We're not there yet. This is a 10% drop. I woke up this morning and saw that everything had dropped, and I went, "Oh,
yeah."
It's just okay.
It's funny because it's so funny you say that because when I woke up, I turned on my alarm, I looked at the phone, and I had a notification from KuCoin saying Bitcoin is below 41 or whatever it was, and I was like, put the phone down, went brushed my teeth. I was like, all right,
okay.
We were expecting this for a while, so
yeah.
Don't be scared. It's
no. That's the thing.
Correction.
Yes, you're a bit poorer than you were yesterday, but if you weren't planning to sell until, I don't know, Bitcoin was $1 million a coin, well, then why do you care that it's 10% less than it was yesterday? It's irrelevant.
Yeah. And I just realized, by the way, this big candle got some help from a little bit of liquidations as well. I think it was 86 million in liquidations, which is not that much for Bitcoin. The overall market was 300 million.
It's not small, but it's
not as big as it tends to be sometimes when you get these candles.
I expect we will have a much bigger one within the next 6 months.
Oh,
for sure. There will be at some point. Sure. Yeah, we have a much bigger one than that, and it'll suck. So
it will suck for those who doesn't. So make sure you have dry powder ready for that. Which means, so you can buy the dip, or the dump. Yeah, at least that's what I'm planning to do. Anyway, we're gonna round it off here, guys. So make sure you subscribe, leave a like, notification bell, and join the Discord. We keep saying this all the time. Join the Discord. We're around. We want to hang out. We want to talk. We want to share ideas, and So we'll see you in Discord, I guess. We're just gonna jump in there right after this one. So we'll see you there, and bye.
Bye.